Took you on a Bushy run today, and I gave you a little bit of a view in different scenes of different things you can see through the battle. Some of the Scottish Highlanders, uh, some of which had never really been named before until I did today. So I wanted to have one and just think about them. But going back to the Native American side, people say, well, why didn't you talk about that more? Those are the people they were fighting. Um, yeah, I do have Native American blood. I'm a Delaware tribe. So it's a very complicated situation. It would have taken me a lot longer to talk about that than I wanted to on the battlefield. Um, how to put it into words? At this point, it's 1763. In relatively 10 years before, less than that, you had the French and Indian War. This isn't that. This is Pontiac's Rebellion. The French and Indian War, various tribes picked sides. Some of them thought the French were going to treat them better, which they did. In most parts, ways, the French treated the Native American tribes a lot better. Some people like Washington and them really, on the British side, valued their Native American guides and forces. If you look at the Braddock's defeat, most of, in fact, the only reason he won was, the French won. He won the first part was because he had a larger army. The reason he lost the second part of the battle and eventually the battle was because Native Americans outflanked him and fought in a different type of warfare than he was used to. So, let's talk a little bit about that, shall we? At this point in time, 1763, the French are gone. They're out of the area. And the Mingo were running things. Mingo were more, and they're not the Mingo today. I don't mean anything against any of the tribes today that's Mingo. They were conglomerate tribes. When you look at that plaque that I showed, it had a bunch of different tribes, Delaware included. Um, it was a conglomerate of tribes and a war party. Up until that point, you had a lot of fighting with those different tribes with one another for land in the Ohio Valley and Pennsylvania. So what basically happened there was they joined forces. This one wise man had a vision and said, "Hey, if we give up all of the trade we've had with the white man, and we stick to our old ways, tell them to leave, we can have this happen." Did you hear that? Thunder beings. It's the first lightning strike of the year. You just saw it with me. I'm not talking bad about you, ancestors. Please, old ones, don't think I'm talking bad about you. I am not. They had a reason. They had a reason to be upset. You know, they had for almost 200 years been dealing with having safety with the Allegheny front. And now they didn't. Now the French are gone, and this guy has this dream that they give up everything that the white man's trading, and then go back to having their land the way it was and kick the white man out. And so that's what they did. That's why those people showed up at that inn and told them, hey, in 4 days I want you out of here. They weren't being cruel. They'd seen many of their families die, mainly people, horrible things happening. And up until that point, and you'll see this later on with Western tribes in the 1880s and 1870s, they really and truly went from being a matriarchal system where the women ran things to being a system with the men. And I've seen it today in the tribe I belong to. I saw people come and have an agenda, start a band, not one that played music, but it was a very male driven, um, fast paced, uh, bravado type of thing. And you need that in that kind of a situation because what you would have normally was the women would stay behind and owned everything, and the men would go out and fight, and they'd come back, and all the women are dead. Their village was destroyed. That's how Washington got the Algonquin name, Destroyer of Towns. So at this point, you're seeing a shift from it being a matriarchal based system, very democratic, to being more masculine, where they're going to go and just you're going to count coup. You're going to go and you're going to fight the enemy, and you're going to be as brutal as you possibly can because you're fighting for your land. And I'm not putting them down. I don't like their tactics because they never worked. When you saw it in Bedford, like with Indian Will's Mountain, I've talked about it. He was a really amazing guy, Lenape. And the Mingo would call the Lenape, the Delaware, the old ones. They could, and not in a good way. They would kind of make fun of you, us like, well, yeah, we're gonna go and fight, and you guys act like you stay behind with the women. You make decisions. We're gonna. So the Lenape were not a very warring people that my people. The Shawnee, yes. So you're still seeing a lot of these Indian forces from Canada. Um, Iroquois, Shawnee, Miami, of course the Mingo bands. And like with the Indian Will thing, like he's a trader. He's up on a mountain. He's trading with the white man. And in his instance, if you go to that one bridge there on Tall's Hill, there's a covered bridge here. It's really beautiful. It's over 100 feet long, and you realize that this man was had these people came through. He knew them. He'd trade with anybody. That was his thing. A lot of people were passing through, and he knew them, and he was like, "Great, great to see you guys. How you doing?" Well, the next day they go and they attack a village there, and they brutally do some things and kidnap these women and children. And they go to Indian Will's place, and he goes, "Hey, man, you know, don't want to pick sides here. I really don't like what you did. Um, I can understand, but you got to leave. You can't stay here." So he was very, understanding of what this wasn't good. And he was killed over it. And they found his body. He was actually a giant. He was over 7 foot tall. My point being, though, is there's a lot of politics in this. When you get away from where you're having a bunch of decisions and councils, understandably, that's how politics worked. It was democratic. They wanted to make and try to have laws and live in peace with the expansion of all these settlers coming in. It wasn't work. It wasn't working at all. So at that point, you have a lot of really, really pissed off Indians, and and they're not here to make friends. They're not here to have families. A lot of them have lost their family members. They're there to get vengeance. They're there to get retribution. They see the fort going up and they see it's not coming down. So I'm not putting them down, but rightly or wrongly, they decided to go in the warpath. And these Scottish Highlanders that are buried there, and Bouquet and all of them, and Washington, saw that for what it was. And they put an end to it. When Pontiac's rebellion ended, it, unfortunately, because the Revolutionary War happened right after that, um, it caused a lot of bad blood between the native tribes and the settlers, even the ones that were peaceful. And it made them be really relocated out to like Oklahoma and other places. Some of us are still around. Okay. Got the hair, man. But I look at it with the benefit of history to say that what they didn't work out. It didn't make things better. In fact, it only helped to make things worse. So when I look at that kind of battlefield, I'm not saying one side was right and one side was wrong, but I can understand the rage of two cultures clashing. And even now, it's kind of bizarre to think of Scottish Highlanders fighting Pontiac warriors. It's just bizarre. Um, that's pretty fascinating. I wanted to share that with all of you. I did identify three of those soldiers that are listed in documents, and nobody mentions their name. It's not even written on anything because it's just obscure. It's like just their name. Well, I did the research and found the background of them, who their parents were, what part of Scotland they were from, all of that, which hopefully will be recorded and for posterity. I hope that I can bring respect to that. As for Native Americans, we never really had a lot of the things like written in stone, so you're not going to find that. You'll find arrowheads, and you will find some things. You might find some um, archaeological things, I'll put it that way, in the ground if they're preserved in a certain way, if there's certain soils or something. But for the most part, it's not. So, but think about that. When you're here and you're doing the research, you're looking at things like this. And think back to a few weeks ago, I was up on Chestnut Ridge, the very same ridge, and showing places that I thought, this looks like this could have been an encampment back in the day. You're looking at 200, maybe 300 years tops of people being here, white man as far as. But the Native Americans were here for up to 15 to 20,000 years before that. So the history of the real history is not even here. It's just you come across it once in a while, maybe in a cave or something. I wanted to share that with all of you. Just a little bit of history, have a little bit of time. It's good for my mind. I love doing this kind of research. To me, it's like my father would do crossword puzzles. I to keep my mind sharp, other than just working, I like to do this kind of stuff, and it's really great to be able to give the honor to those Highlanders, especially John Graham. You know, the motto of John Glan's clan, he was with the Black Watch, but 100 years before that, at that point, you have to realize too, the clans are really being to where they're not allowed to show their loyalty. They're worried about the British are worried about them um, trying to overthrow the king a lot. So they've all grouped into the Black Watch. They're more of a regiment of the Royal Military. But John Graham's actual clan was Clan Graham, and the symbol of it is a stork fighting with an eagle, and the motto is Nioble, which means never forget. So John Graham, it's good seeing you today, and letting your name not be forgotten by history.